Our look into the book of Daniel. Welcome back, guys. It's good to have you here. Join me as we dive in. Open up your Bibles to Daniel chapter 3. We're going to dive into the Word. My name's Connor. Welcome back to Newcom Youth. I hope you guys have been having a good week, a good summer. We're going to dive right in. If you guys remember anything at all, Daniel's been making some serious power moves with the king. Not in his own way, right? But he's been leaning into the power of God to guide him through. And as a result, he's actually been lifted up in power and been blessed with this king, Nebuchadnezzar. Great name. Great name. So we're going to keep looking this week as well into what the power of God looks like in these moments, and how we can trust in him, God, and his power over the pressures that get put on us in this world. The story of Daniel and his friends here in Daniel is a huge testament to that. So we just left off where King Nebuchadnezzar was like, oh my gosh, Daniel, you just told me your dream and you pointed to God as the one who knew it. Your God is awesome. Your God is amazing. And you'd think that would be a good step for King Nebuchadnezzar, right? Wrong. Well, maybe one good step, but he's got a long way to go. See, what Nebuchadnezzar does next is he decides that he's going to put up this giant statue, this golden statue of a god. Now, it's not sure if it's one that looks like him or if it's just one that he created, but it's this golden statue that's 90 feet in the air, like crazy tall, this looming figure right in the center of all of the land. And remember, this is like a kingdom that Nebuchadnezzar is reigning over. This is like multiple previous cultures, multiple different languages that he has conquered, that he is trying to unite under one statue and making everyone bow down before this statue. Now, we're taking a break from Daniel himself, the character, the person, and we're actually going to his friends for this story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, when Daniel gained favor with King, he said, hey, can you lift up my friends too? And so he put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in charge of different things in the land. And so he sent them off to a different area. These three friends are now up in a higher position. So now when the king goes and makes this declaration of, all right, everyone, when you hear the sound of all of these different musical instruments, everyone in the land needs to stop, bow down to this golden figure that's looming in front of them, and you need to worship that God. Now, in the punishment for this, he put a punishment down because you need to enforce it somehow if you're going to make people do it, is if anyone refused, they would be thrown into a furnace. So a giant pit of fire that's meant to like melt everything, like just destroy. So this would be thrown into this furnace of fire if they don't bow down. That's a serious threat, right? That's a serious threat. That's like some scary that'll end your life type stuff. Now, this got me thinking when I was going through and reading this, but thinking about what price I have on worshiping God. What price have I put on worshiping my God? And what I mean by that is what would it take for me to sell out my God? Both in the positive and the negative. So join me in asking yourself that question. And if you need to, pause the video for a second and take a quick, see if you could figure out an answer. Like, what would it take for me to say, I don't believe in God, I would worship something else? Like if I put $1 million in front of you, would you say, all right, I'd rather have the million and just say right now, even just in this moment, like, right? Say, no, I don't believe in who God is, but I'll take the $1 million now, and then maybe I'll believe later. Would you do that? That's a tough faith question, right? What does that mean to sell out God? That's my first question for you as you're thinking, is would I sell out God? Would I sell him out for anything? Both in the positive, like, hey, if I put a Lambo in your face right now and said, hey, all you got to do is say, I don't really believe in God. I actually worship, and I put a log in front of you and called it Ben. I actually worship that log called Ben. Now, please go bow down to it, but you get a Lambo. Like, would you? For a positive reinforcement? Sell out God and say, for this item I would. Now flip it on the negative. Positive is kind of an interesting thing to think about, but then if we flip it in the negative and say, if I were to, just like in this story, say, if you don't worship this giant statue in front of me, if you don't bow down and worship it and call it your God, you're going to be thrown into a furnace and you're going to be burned alive. That's like something like that. Like it's meant to be a little uncomfortable. Like this isn't, like an easy lesson sort of thing. That's like oh gosh, like I don't want to think about that situation, and it's scary because I want to live, of course, but like I don't know. Can I just my thought growing up had always been, and even now as I'm pushing my faith forward, the thought pops in of, well, it's not that bad to just like say it one time. I can go back on what I say and just be like, yeah, okay, I worship that God, I'm gonna kneel and fake it and pretend, and then I'll just afterwards go around and turn to God and be like, hey God, so I kind of had to like worship that other fake God for a second because I needed to protect my life. It's an uncomfortable scenario to think about, but what I want you to be thinking about as we dive in is whatever you are willing to sell out your God for is what you're actually putting in a higher value than your relationship with God. And that's tough. We're all flawed, and sometimes we do that. We get caught up in our own world, our own life, and if we were to truly ask ourselves, sometimes we put something up above God. I think that's something we need to check in our hearts a lot. But that's what's happening is to say, if I were to say yes and kneel down and bow down before this fake God, it's saying that I'm valuing my own life more than I'm valuing who God is, and the fact that he is real, and the fact that he has a relationship with me. It's what it's saying. And so when you put it like that, it makes it pretty significant. If you were to just like go and do one thing for a second, it makes it pretty significant. So think about that. Would I sell out God? Now we're going to take a look at what happens here, because it's pretty lame actually. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, of course, they're like, we're not going to do this because we have our God, and they're even like put in this position of authority, so other people are like looking to them as leaders in this area, and so it's a pretty tough situation. Now a bunch of other leaders go and snitch on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they go tell the king, hey, you've got some leaders here who won't bow down, and you said you would throw those people in the furnace, so you need to go make do on those promises. Now that's the worst, right? All of a sudden you've got people like ratting you out, telling on you for serving your own God. That's not fair. That's not fair, right? Oh, that's a tough situation to think of yourself in. You're stuck there, you're in trouble, and now you're being brought to the fiery furnace. So King Nebuchadnezzar goes and he brings Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego basically to the furnace and says, you have one last chance. You need to worship my God and forsake yours. Otherwise, you're being thrown into the furnace. And this is their response. Look at this. This is amazing. This is what we can model ourselves after, is these people who are holding fast to who God is. As they said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, if we're going to be thrown into the furnace because of turning against our God, whom we serve, if this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. Our God is able to protect us, is what they're saying. Our God has the power in this situation. Not you, king, not your fake God that you've thrown up. And even though it's looming and it's probably the biggest thing these people have ever seen, it's huge. He says, our God can protect us because he's the one that has the real power. He created everything. and that he will deliver us out of your hand. Our God is greater than you, king. And then he says, but if not, if we do get thrown into the furnace and we get burned and killed and our lives are taken from this world, if not, be it known to you, king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. They take a stand. They say, we believe our God has the power to deliver us. He will deliver us. We're believing in that. But then even if he doesn't, even if God chooses to do operate in a separate way, we're still not going to worship a false God, because it's not our lives that we're trying to save. We're leaning into who God is. We're not worshiping a false God because we know that it's false, and we're going to stand with God no matter what the outcome is, because he's the real God. It's that simple. And so they go and they take the aspect of their lives and they say, we believe that our God has the power to protect us and he will deliver us from your hand. But then even if not, we're still going to serve him. He's still God. That's crazy. I think in the hierarchy of things, a lot of us would say, well, when our life is put in danger, we might okay, God, I need to save my life real quick, and I'll come back to you right after I save my own life, right? By doing what the king says for just a second, and then I'll go back to worshiping you. Whoo! But these guys are like, no, my life is still lower than who God is for me. God is number one, top slot. I won't sell him out. That is crazy, and it's such a good model of faith, and it's what our faith should look like. If we believe God is who he is, what can tear us against and have us sell him out? Nothing. And in fact, Jesus comes later. When Jesus comes and lives on this world and is giving people teachings, he goes and expresses it in a very similar way. And he says this in Matthew 16:25, that it's not about saving your own life, right? It's not about, oh, I need to put my life first real quick so that I can save it, and then I'll come back and serve God. Jesus says, whoever would save his life, selling out God to save your own, would lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Exactly what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are doing right now. They're saying, I will serve God till the end because he is the one true God. That's it. And I will, if that means losing my life, that's how it will be saved, because it's in relationship with the one true living God that we can be saved, guys. And Jesus is the one that's saying it here, and through him, we are able to have a relationship with the one true living God. Because he came and paid the price for us, because he came and lived and died on this earth and then resurrected 3 days later, that we could have a relationship to God through him. And that's worth fighting for. That's worth standing for. And it's leaning into who he is where the power comes from. The power to save our own lives, guys, will only lead us down a terrible path. And it will end in destruction, because we will sacrifice ourselves, who we are, our souls, our morals, our everything, in order to preserve our own life. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego show this to us in action by saying, I'm not going to sacrifice and sell out my God one little bit, because that leads to destruction just to save my own life right now. But because God has power over life and death here, right? He can protect them, and eternal. It goes beyond just saving our lives here, guys. It goes beyond that. And so they take a stand and they say, we're standing for God, with God, and we're making it known there is no selling him out. Oh my goodness. It's incredible. Now, I've got one more verse for you too in Matthew, because that means that they're about to get thrown into the fire. And that's exactly what happens is King Nebuchadnezzar has his men take these three guys up into the furnace, and they open this giant furnace, and he turns it up way past what it should be, because he's like, all right, they've defied me, I'm going to scorch them. And he turns it up so high that when the guards open up the furnace, they put and bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in. They throw them in with all their clothes on and everything. But the guards who opened the doors, the fire came out and burned and killed the guards who opened the doors. Like, that's how hot this is. Just the people who were open the doors go singed. The other three, the three friends, get tossed in there. Now, I would be trembling. I would be afraid. Someone who could throw me into fire, kill this body that I'm living in right now. But Jesus gives another statement in Matthew that I want to pull up, and he says, "Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul." That's King Nebuchadnezzar right now. Don't fear him. Don't feel the pressure that he's putting on you to serve another god. Don't fear any other pressure that you could come up with, that you could be living right now in junior high and high school. Don't fear the pressure of your peers. Don't fear the pressure of what other people think of you at all. But stand for who God is. Because rather fear him who can destroy soul and body in hell. Stand up for the one who has control over life and death here and eternal. Stand up for him. So as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are thrown into the flames, all of a sudden King Nebuchadnezzar looks in. He says, "Wait a minute. It doesn't look like they're being burned at all. I still see their figures. I still see their shadows. And yet, didn't we throw 3 people in there? How come I see 4 people? I see 4 people now. How is there another one? And that other one seems to be protecting them. They're not even, there's no cries of anguish. There's no burning of clothes. And there's a 4th person in there." And he goes and he says this. He says, "And it looks like I see 4 men unbound walking. They're just walking in the midst of the fire. They are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." So it's not necessarily clear here if this is a showing of Jesus, of the Son of God, or if this is an angel that was sent to protect by God. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their bounds are broken free, and they are untouched by the flames. They are protected by God. The power of God is demonstrated in their boldness. And then this angel or Jesus, one of the two, comes and protects them directly. And these people are witnessing the power of God in action. So all of a sudden, they go and they're witnessing God protecting these 3 followers of him. And that's a big point, guys, is the power of God protects. That will never be able to be displayed if we don't stand up for him. That will never be displayed because we'll be too busy trying to save our own lives in our own power, and we need to let the power of God be shown to the people of this world so that they would come to know him by letting him protect us, by stepping out in faith. Here's a few quick verses as we finish up of what happens at the end here. So King Nebuchadnezzar came near the doors of the fiery furnace and says, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." So he calls them out. He calls them out of the furnace, and he goes and he recognizes, as he's saying this, he recognizes that they are serving the Most High God who has protected him. He's able to put these pieces together just like he did with Daniel before. He says, "Wow, you guys are servants of the Most High God. I'm amazed. I'm astonished. This is incredible." So he calls them out of the fire, and then he says, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and set aside the king's commandment, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God." Guys, that right there, that final sentence, I want that to be the description of me. I want that to be the description of you, that people would come to know who God is because we are willing to stand up for him, because we're willing to put aside the pressures of this world. We are able to put aside the king's command of what we're supposed to do and listen solely to God and stand for him and refuse to serve and worship any other God except the real one that has been revealed to us through Christ Jesus. So here's my final point. Share God by standing for God. That is how the power of God would be revealed to people, so that we can point to him to show, hey, I just stood for what was right. I stood on who God is. I refuse to worship anything else. And here I am, protected. I am always going to stand for God. Don't let anything, any pressure allow you to sell your relationship with God out, even for a second. Because it is that. It's a relationship, and it's meaningful. It should be a sacred spot that should only be for God. And when we stand up for him, we show people and we share God with the rest of the world. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So be bold in your faith, guys. Don't let anything pressure you to cast away. I know sometimes it's easy, or feels somewhat easy, to feel the pressure of people. If people make fun of you for going to church, for believing in a God that they say isn't real, and then you go, oh, well, I mean, I don't really go to church that much. Or I know it's easy to, but I want to encourage you to be bold in standing up for your faith and pointing to God every step of the way. There's power in his name. He has the power more than any of the people of this world, the fake gods of this world, the 90-foot tower of gold that everyone else in the world is bowing down to. Stand up for God.